Have you ever noticed how someone who once took you for granted suddenly starts paying attention the moment you stop chasing? There's something deeply psychological happening when an avoidant person encounters someone whose self-respect is unshakable. Today, we're diving into the fascinating dynamics of what happens inside an avoidance mind when they realize your self-worth is stronger than their need for control. This isn't about playing games or manipulation, it's about understanding the profound shift that occurs when you choose yourself first. Let's explore the six powerful stages of this transformation. Imagine this: you've spent months, maybe years, bending yourself into impossible shapes for someone who keeps you at arm's length. And then one day, something clicks. You stop chasing, you stop explaining, you stop shrinking yourself to fit into their comfort zone. And suddenly, they notice the moment you stand firm in your self-respect, the entire dynamic changes. An avoidant person is used to being the one who controls the emotional distance. They're comfortable being the one who decides when to pull close and when to disappear. But when you stop participating in that dance, when you stop being available at their convenience, that's when the power shift happens. Your silence becomes louder than any words you ever spoke. Your absence becomes more present than your constant availability ever was. And here's the thing: they feel it. Avoidants are experts at reading energy, and they can sense when someone has genuinely moved into their own power. This isn't about playing hard to get, this is about being hard to manipulate. The energy you emit when you truly value yourself is unmistakable. It's not performative or strategic, it's authentic. And that authenticity creates a frequency they've never encountered from you before. They're used to your pursuit, your need for validation, your willingness to accept whatever scraps of attention they offered. But now you've withdrawn that energy entirely, not out of spite or revenge, but out of genuine self-preservation and self-love. This shift is so profound that it disrupts every assumption they've made about you and the relationship. They thought they knew exactly how much they could give and still keep you around. They calculated the minimum effort required to maintain your interest. But your self-respect has rewritten the entire equation, and suddenly their old formulas don't work anymore. For an avoidant, the push-pull cycle is oxygen. They push you away to feel safe, then pull you back when they fear losing you. It's predictable. It's comfortable. It's their pattern. But what happens when you refuse to be pulled back? When your self-respect becomes stronger than their ego, you break the cycle they've been running their entire life. You're no longer the safety net they can fall back on. You're no longer the one who absorbs their emotional unavailability and asks for nothing in return. And that terrifies them, but it also intrigues them, because deep down, every avoidant knows they need someone who won't tolerate their patterns, someone who won't enable their fear of intimacy. Your boundaries become the mirror they've been avoiding, and for the first time, they have to look at themselves. This cycle has worked for them countless times before. It's protected them from vulnerability, from the risk of real intimacy, from the potential pain of genuine connection. But your refusal to participate anymore means they can no longer hide behind the familiar choreography of advance and retreat. They can't predict your next move because you're no longer reacting from a place of emotional desperation. You're responding from a place of self-worth, and that's a language they haven't learned to speak. The discomfort they feel isn't just about losing you, it's about losing the control they've always maintained in relationships. They're forced to confront the reality that their emotional unavailability has actual consequences, that people won't wait forever, that love requires more than breadcrumbs and occasional bursts of affection followed by weeks of distance. An avoidance ego tells them they don't need anyone. It tells them they're better off alone. That vulnerability is weakness, that emotional connection is a trap. But when they encounter someone with unshakable self-respect, their ego meets its match. Your self-worth doesn't argue with their ego. It doesn't try to convince them of your value. It simply exists solid, unmovable, unapologetic. And that creates an internal crisis for them, because your self-respect is proof that the stories their ego tells them aren't true. They start to question, why isn't this person begging for my attention? Why aren't they affected by my distance? Why do they seem perfectly fine without me? And in those questions, the cracks in their defensive armor begin to show. The ego that has protected them for so long suddenly seems less like armor and more like a prison. Your self-respect challenges every defense mechanism they've built. It doesn't do this through confrontation or ultimatums, but through the simple act of you living your life with dignity and purpose. with or without them in it. This is deeply unsettling for someone whose entire relational strategy has been built on the assumption that others need them more than they need others. Your self-respect flips that script entirely. It demonstrates that you're complete on your own, that you don't require their validation to feel whole, that your happiness isn't contingent on their inconsistent attention. And this realization strikes at the very heart of their ego's narrative. They've convinced themselves that their emotional distance is a form of strength, that their inability to commit is actually a sign of independence. But your self-respect reveals the truth. That real strength lies in vulnerability. That true independence means choosing connection from a place of wholeness rather than avoiding it from a place of fear. Avoidants don't have epiphanies. They don't wake up one morning and suddenly understand everything. Their realization happens in slow motion, a gradual dawning that the person they took for granted isn't coming back. They start remembering the things they dismissed, the effort you made that they minimized, the love you offered that they couldn't receive. And now that it's gone, the absence of it becomes deafening. This is when you might notice subtle changes, a random text after weeks of silence, a question that seems designed to check if you're still emotionally invested, an attempt to re-establish the connection on their terms. But here's what's different now. Your self-respect doesn't waver. You don't jump at the breadcrumbs. You don't interpret their minimal effort as a grand gesture. You hold your ground, and that is what truly gets their attention. The slow motion nature of their realization is both fascinating and frustrating. It unfolds over weeks, sometimes months, as they gradually piece together what they've lost. At first, they might tell themselves you're just having a moment, that you'll come back around like you always have. But as days turn into weeks and your absence remains consistent, the reality begins to settle in. They start noticing the little things, how you no longer initiate contact, how you're no longer available for those late night conversations that always happened on their schedule, how your social media shows a person moving forward rather than waiting in limbo. Each of these observations builds upon the last, creating a cumulative weight that their denial can no longer support. The memories start flooding back. All the times you showed up and they didn't. All the moments you made them a priority while they kept you as an option. All the love you poured into a relationship that they kept on simmer instead of letting it boil. Something fascinating happens when an avoidant realizes they can't get the old response from you. The dismissal they once showed you transforms into intrigue. You become the puzzle they need to solve, the person they can't quite figure out. But this isn't about them suddenly valuing you. Not yet. This is about them being confronted with someone who values themselves more than they value the relationship. And for an avoidant who's used to people sacrificing their dignity for connection, this is completely foreign territory. They start to wonder what changed. They might even ask mutual friends about you. They pay attention to your social media in ways they never did before. But the real shift happens internally. Your self-respect forces them to reconsider their entire approach to relationships. It challenges the belief that emotional distance equals safety. The intrigue phase is marked by a kind of curiosity they've never shown before. Suddenly, they're interested in your life, your thoughts, your activities, not because they've fallen deeply in love, but because they can't understand why you're not interested in theirs anymore. This is a crucial distinction to recognize. The attention you're receiving isn't necessarily born from genuine affection or remorse. It's often rooted in their need to understand how they've lost control of the narrative. They're used to being the prize, the one who's pursued, the one who holds all the cards. Your self-respect has redistributed that power, and they're scrambling to make sense of it. You might notice them watching your stories more frequently, liking old photos or finding excuses to reach out about trivial matters. These aren't necessarily signs of rekindled interest in a relationship. They're signs of an ego that's been bruised and is seeking to restore itself. The question burning in their mind isn't, how can I win this person back? But rather, how did I lose my influence over this person? This distinction matters because it helps you stay grounded in your self-respect rather than misinterpreting their renewed attention as emotional growth or genuine change. This is where the truth reveals itself. When faced with someone whose self-respect is non-negotiable, an avoidant has two choices: grow or retreat. Some will double down on their patterns. They'll convince themselves they never cared anyway. They'll find someone new to repeat the cycle with, someone who hasn't discovered their own power yet. And if that's the choice they make, Your self-respect just saved you from years of emotional starvation. But others, the ones capable of real growth, will start doing the internal work. They'll begin to recognize that their fear of intimacy has cost them something valuable. Your unwillingness to accept less than you deserve becomes the catalyst for their transformation, not because you're trying to change them, but because your example shows them what's possible. Here's the ultimate truth yourself. Respect was never about changing them. It was about honoring yourself. Whether an avoidant rises to meet you or walks away, your dignity remains intact. You stop being the person who waits, who hopes, who shrinks. You become the person who knows their worth and refuses to negotiate it. And that version of you, that's the one who attracts real love, not the conditional, convenient kind, but the kind that shows up consistently, vulnerably, and wholeheartedly. The ones who choose growth will often go through a painful process of self-examination. They'll start therapy, read books about attachment styles, and genuinely confront the childhood wounds that created their avoidant patterns in the first place. They'll recognize that their fear of vulnerability has been costing them authentic connection, and they'll begin the hard work of learning to show up differently. But here's what's critical to understand. Even if they do this work, it's not your responsibility to wait around while they figure it out. Your self-respect means you continue moving forward with your life, building your own happiness, creating your own fulfillment. If their growth is genuine, and if the timing aligns, and if you're still available and interested, then perhaps there's a possibility for reconnection. But that's a far cry from putting your life on hold hoping they'll change. Because when your self-respect is stronger than anyone's ego, you stop settling for anything less than you deserve. The question isn't whether they'll change. The question is, will you continue to stand firm in who you've become?